Musutafu, Japan. The sky was normal for one more second. Then it tore open. A band of color flashed across the clouds, bright and sharp, like a bridge made of light. Air shook. People on the street looked up as the wind slammed into them. Signs rattled. Loose papers flew like birds. In the middle of it, something fell. Not a meteor, not a plane. A man. He hit the road with a crack that split the asphalt. A circle of dust rolled out and shoved cars back on their tires. When the dust thinned, he was already standing. He was tall and broad. Red cape, dark armor, long blonde hair that moved in the wind like it belonged there. In his right hand, he held a short-handled hammer with a square head. It looked heavy enough to crush a car. He breathed in once, slow, like he was tasting the air. His eyes swept over the city, tall buildings, bright signs, crowds, sirens in the distance. "This is not Midgard as I know it," he said, voice calm but loud. "Yet it is. Familiar." A scream cut through the street. 3 blocks away, a masked man with metal arms was ripping an ATM out of a wall. Another villain was firing blasts that cracked windows. People ran in every direction, pushing and stumbling. The blond man's head snapped toward the sound. His face hardened, not with fear, but with focus. He moved. He didn't sprint like a normal person. He took one step, then the ground pushed back under him. He crossed the street in a blink and landed between a woman and a falling chunk of concrete. He raised his hammer and caught the slab on the flat of the head. The concrete shattered into safe pieces. Dust puffed around him. The woman stared up, frozen. He nodded once, simple, like this was just how things were supposed to go. "Go," he told her. "Behind that car. Stay low." She ran. The metal-armed villain swung at him. The punch was strong enough to dent a steel door. The blond man caught the fist with one hand. The villain's eyes went wide behind his mask. The blond man didn't crush his hand. He didn't twist. He just squeezed until the metal arm squealed. "You are strong," he said, almost polite, "but you are not wise." He shoved the villain back. The man skidded across the street like a broken toy and slammed into a bus stop. The second villain fired a bright blast. The blond man tilted his hammer, and the blast hit the hammerhead and scattered into sparks. The sparks fizzed out before they touched a single person. The villain stared. "What are you?" The blond man lifted his chin. "A protector." He raised the hammer toward the sky. The clouds above them had started to swirl around the rainbow tear, like the air remembered it. His voice rose, deep and clear. "Enough," lightning answered. A bolt dropped from the clouds in a straight line. It did not hit a building. It did not hit a person. It struck the street in front of the villains like a warning sign carved by the heavens. The shockwave shoved the villains off their feet. It also pushed the crowds back without throwing them into walls, like the wind chose its target. Car alarms screamed. People screamed too. The blond man's eyes flicked to the crowd. He lowered the hammer a little, like he was trying to make himself smaller without losing control. "Do not run into each other," he called. "Move as one. Help the small ones." That order, said with such certainty, made some people obey without knowing why. A man grabbed a child. A woman pulled an older man away from the street. Sirens grew louder. From the corner of the street, something long and dark snapped out like a snake. It wrapped around the blond man's wrist. A capture scarf. The man holding it dropped from a rooftop. He wore black, goggles, and a tired expression that did not match the speed of his movement. Shota Aizawa landed in a crouch and stared straight at the blond man's eyes. Aizawa's own eyes went red. His quirk activated. Nothing changed. The blond man looked down at the scarf on his wrist, then back up at Aizawa. His brows pulled together. Not angry yet, just curious. "You bind me?" he asked. Aizawa pulled hard, trying to yank the stranger off balance. The scarf tightened like a clamp. The stranger didn't budge. He didn't even lean. Aizawa's face didn't move much, but his mind did. Fast, cold. Erasure should have shut down any quirk. Even mutants felt it, even if it didn't remove their body changes. Everyone had something to erase. This guy had nothing to erase. Or he wasn't using a quirk at all. Aizawa's fingers tightened. "Hands where I can see them," he said. The stranger's hand stayed on the hammer. He didn't raise it. He didn't swing. He just held it like a soldier holds a sword. "I will not harm you," the stranger said. "But you should not pull on a chain you cannot move." Aizawa's jaw tensed. More heroes arrived in a blur of motion and bright costumes. A woman giant-sized in the distance. A man of wood and vines. Police cars. Loudspeakers. The street became a ring of eyes. The blond man turned in a slow circle, reading the room. "So many warriors," he said, and there was a hint of approval. Then his tone sharpened again. "Where is your king?" Aizawa didn't answer. He flicked his gaze to the hammer. That hammer felt like a problem in the shape of a tool. Aizawa spoke into his earpiece, low. "We've got an unknown, not a quirk response. Treat as high threat until proven otherwise." The stranger heard him anyway. He gave a short, humorless breath through his nose. "You fear me," he said, not as an insult but as a fact. Aizawa didn't blink. "I plan for worst cases." The stranger nodded once, like that was sensible. Then he looked up at the torn sky again. For the first time, something like worry crossed his face. "And I must learn," he said softly, "what gate brought me here." By the time they got him off the street, the city was still shaking with rumors. Aizawa walked a step behind the stranger, scarf loose but ready. He watched his hands, his feet, his eyes. The stranger walked like he belonged in armor, like the weight was nothing. Police and heroes formed a moving wall around them to block cameras. It didn't work. Phones rose over shoulders everywhere. A helicopter thumped overhead. The stranger glanced up at it like it was an annoying insect. Aizawa kept his voice flat. "Name." The stranger looked at him as if the question was too small to matter. Then he answered anyway. "I am Thor," he said. "Son of Odin." Aizawa did not react outwardly, but the name landed in his head with a thud. People didn't usually introduce themselves with family lines unless they were trying to intimidate, or unless it was simply true in their world. "Thor," Aizawa repeated. "Right. And that hammer?" Thor lifted it slightly. The air around it felt heavy, not in a physical way, more like a pressure in the room. "Mjolnir," Thor said. Aizawa nodded as if he was noting knife or gun. They took him to a secured site first, then quickly moved him again to a place with better defenses and smarter eyes. U.A. High School. The front gates opened like a mouth swallowing a secret. Inside, staff waited. Security drones hummed. Nezu stood at the center, small and smiling, looking almost cute if you ignored his sharp eyes. All Might stood nearby, tall but thinner than the legends in old videos. He watched Thor like he was watching a storm that might become a shelter or a flood. Thor stepped into the main hall and looked around, taking in the halls, the training grounds beyond, the smell of sweat and metal. "A school?" he asked. Nezu clasped his hands. "A training ground," he corrected, voice cheerful. "For heroes." Thor's face softened a little. "Good. Teach them well." Aizawa's eyes narrowed. He didn't like how quickly Thor accepted the idea, like hero training was natural, like it was a duty. That part made sense. The part that didn't was the scale. Nezu tilted his head. "Before we discuss anything else, I would love to understand what you are." Thor looked at him like the answer was obvious. "A god," Thor said simply. The room went quiet. Aizawa felt his shoulders tighten. He didn't believe in gods as a job title. He believed in people. Quirks, tech, lies, trauma. But he had watched this man call lightning like it was a reflex. All Might took one step forward, careful. "If you are here," All Might said, "then perhaps it was not by choice." Thor's eyes met his. There was something old in that gaze. Something heavy. Not tired, exactly. More like someone who had seen too many battlefields. "I did not ask to leave my realm," Thor said. "I was in Asgard. There was a pull, a wrench, and then the Bridge of Light opened, but not as I know it." Nezu's ears twitched. "A Bridge of Light." Thor nodded. "A path between worlds." Aizawa watched Nezu, The principal was already building a map in his head. Between worlds wasn't a metaphor, not with the sky tier they all saw. Nezu gestured kindly. Please, we have a room that can handle strong guests. Thor followed without protest. That made Aizawa more suspicious, not less. The room they used was reinforced, layered with metal and special materials. Sensors lined the corners. Cameras sat behind thick glass. If the stranger was lying, they wanted proof. Thor stood in the center like a statue that could start moving at any time. Mjolnir hung at his side. Nezu spoke softly, like he was talking to a student. In our world, most people have quirks. Powers that come from biology. We can measure them. We can suppress them. Aizawa stepped forward. His voice stayed flat. I tried. Thor looked at him and nodded. You stared into my eyes with intent. Aizawa didn't like that he described it so calmly. Nezu smiled. Exactly. So you are not powered by what we call a quirk. Thor lifted his hammer slightly. My power is mine. It is the blood of my father, the storms of my realm, and my own will. Aizawa's thoughts jumped. Blood is in genetics. Realm is in place. It didn't fit any chart. Nezu's tone remained light. May we test your limits? Thor's mouth twitched. It wasn't a full smile. It was closer to amusement. You may try, he said. Nezu signaled. A drone floated forward with a metal arm. It reached for Mjolnir. Thor didn't move. The drone's fingers touched the hammer handle. The drone strained. Motors whined. The metal arm shook. Mjolnir did not lift. Nezu watched closely. Interesting. A second drone joined, then a third, all pulling in different angles like they were trying to break the idea of weight. Nothing. Aizawa felt a strange itch at the base of his skull. The hammer wasn't glued. Thor's hand wasn't holding it down. It just refused. Nezu's eyes glittered. Is it locked? Thor's voice was even. It is worthy. Aizawa frowned. That's not an answer. Thor looked at him like he was the one missing something simple. It is. Nezu clapped once, delighted. Marvelous. A moral security system. Aizawa shot Nezu a glance. The principal was enjoying this far too much. Nezu leaned forward. Can you lift it? Thor set the hammer on the floor and stepped back. Yes. He reached out and lifted it with ease, as if the hammer weighed no more than a book. Then he placed it back down. Nezu nodded to All Might. All Might stepped forward, slow and careful, like he was approaching an injured animal. His smile was gentle. May I? All Might asked. Thor studied him. Something in his eyes softened. You may try. All Might wrapped both hands around the handle and pulled. His muscles tightened. His boots squeaked on the floor. Nothing. All Might let out a short laugh, almost embarrassed. I see. Thor didn't mock him. He didn't even look proud. That is not shame, Thor said. Worthiness is not a contest of strength. All Might straightened, breathing a little heavier, and nodded like he understood something deeper than a hammer. Aizawa watched Thor say it, and he hated that the words sounded honest. Nezu waved a paw. Now, for safety, we will attempt a different kind of test. Aizawa moved closer again, eyes narrowing. Thor's attention shifted to him. Again? Yes, Aizawa said. If you have a quirk, I want to know why I can't stop it. Thor didn't resist. Look then. Aizawa activated erasure again, hard enough that it made his eyes ache. Thor's lightning didn't flicker. The air didn't change. The man didn't weaken. If anything, Thor looked more awake, like being challenged woke up the warrior part of him. Aizawa turned it off, blinking away the strain. Nezu's voice stayed gentle. That means our standard restraints may not work on you. Thor nodded. Then do not try to chain the sea. Aizawa's expression stayed blank, but his patience thinned. We chain dangerous things all the time. Thor looked at him, and for a second the room felt smaller. Then you live in fear, Thor said. Aizawa felt his jaw tighten. We live in reality. All Might stepped between them. Just a little. Not physically blocking. Just changing the temperature of the moment. Thor, All Might said. People here have lived with power abused by villains for generations. Thor's eyes shifted to All Might, the tension eased by a notch. I have also lived with monsters, Thor said. I know what evil looks like. Nezu's smile returned. Then perhaps we can work together. Aizawa didn't like how easy that sounded. Working together with a living disaster was still a disaster. Deku did not mean to eavesdrop. He really didn't. But the moment the alert spread through UA, rumors moved faster than any student. A mystery hero had fallen out of the sky. A pro-hero was escorting him. He had a hammer. He called lightning without a visible quirk activation. Deku's heart pounded just hearing it. He ended up near a hallway with a half-open door and heard voices inside. He recognized Nezu. All Might too. And a deep voice he had never heard before. He should have left. Instead, he peeked. And he saw him. The man in armor. The red cape. The hammer that felt like it had its own gravity. Deku's brain started taking notes without permission. No obvious support gear. Not like Endeavor. Lightning control. Possible mutant? No. Aizawa can't erase it. Maybe not a quirk at all. Then the man turned his head and looked right at Deku. Deku froze. The man's eyes weren't angry. They were sharp, like a hawk's, but not cruel. You, the man said. Deku stepped in, bowing too fast. Sorry, I didn't mean to. All Might, the man said, looking past Deku for a second. This one has a brave heart. It pulled him closer than fear pushed him away. Deku blinked, his face went hot. All Might smiled, a little tired but proud. Young Midoriya is like that. The man crouched slightly to be closer to Deku's height, even though he still looked like a mountain compared to him. What is your name? The man asked. I'm Izuku Midoriya, Deku said, voice shaking. Then he added quickly, Sir. The man's mouth pulled into a real smile this time. You do not have to call me sir. Deku swallowed. Okay. The man stood again and looked to Nezu. If your students train to protect, then let them see what protection truly is. Aizawa's voice cut in from the side. Or let them see what a threat looks like. The man's smile faded, but he didn't snap back. He looked at Aizawa with something like respect. You speak as a guard dog speaks, he said. You bite first. Aizawa didn't flinch. Better than biting last. Nezu's eyes danced. This is wonderful for education, terrible for paperwork. The word paperwork made Thor's eyebrows rise. Paper. Work? He repeated slowly, like it was a spell. Nezu nodded. Forms. Licenses. Approval. Thor stared for a full second, then let out a short laugh. Not mean, just shocked. You require permission to save lives, he asked. All Might lifted a hand. It's complicated. Thor's laugh stopped. In war, we do not ask paper if a child should be pulled from fire, he said. Aizawa crossed his arms. In our world, unregulated power causes panic and chaos. Thor glanced toward the hallway windows, where distant sirens still echoed outside the school. Then your world must learn calm, Thor said. Not cages. Deku felt his chest tighten. Part of him wanted to cheer. Part of him worried what those words meant when the government heard them. Nezu clapped again, bright as ever. We will discuss policy later. First, Thor, if that truly is your name, can you explain the tear in the sky? Thor's gaze went distant. There is a bridge, he said. In my world it is guided. Today it was wrong. A wound, not a road. Aizawa's voice stayed cold. A wound that opened over a city. Thor's grip tightened on Mjolnir. I did not choose it, he said, controlled. But I will not leave a wound bleeding. All Might nodded slowly. Then we share a goal. Aizawa didn't say yes, but he didn't say no either. The first night was not restful. Thor stood on a training field under the open sky, alone except for Aizawa watching from the shadows. The air smelled like grass and metal. Distant city lights made the clouds look gray. Thor looked up. He could feel the world's storms. They were smaller here, different. Like the sky spoke a different language. He closed his eyes and listened anyway. Aizawa spoke without stepping closer. If you really are what you say. Thor opened his eyes. You doubt. Aizawa's voice stayed flat. I verify. Thor nodded once. Then verify this. He lifted Mjolnir and spun it once. Wind rose, clean and fast. Leaves lifted off the ground and swirled in a tight circle. Not a tornado, not destruction, just control. Thor stopped the spin. The wind died like it had been shut off. Aizawa watched, careful. He had seen wind quirks. This didn't feel like a quirk. This felt like the sky itself obeyed. Aizawa's gut warned him again. If he turns, we do not have an answer. Thor lowered his hammer. I will not harm your students, Thor said. Aizawa didn't accept promises easily. Still, he asked, why? Thor looked toward the dorm building, where lights glowed behind curtains. Because they are children, he said, like that was enough. And because they are trying. Aizawa's eyes softened by half a degree, then hardened again. Tomorrow, Aizawa said, you meet people who don't care about children or trying. Thor's mouth tightened. Then tomorrow, I do my duty. Aizawa watched him a moment longer. A god, or a man who believed he was one. Either way, the world had changed. And somewhere out there, villains were watching too. The next day, they tried to make a plan that could survive reality. Hawks arrived with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Endeavor arrived like a fire walking on two legs. Both of them looked at Thor like he was a weapon dropped onto their table. Nezu spoke first, still upbeat. Thor will remain on campus for now. Limited outings, escort required. Thor's brows pulled down. I am not a prisoner. Endeavor's voice was rough. Then don't act like a liability. Thor turned his head slowly and looked at Endeavor from top to bottom. You burn, Thor said, and you are proud of it. Endeavor's eyes narrowed. Yes. Thor nodded. Good. Pride can be strength, or it can blind. Endeavor's flame flared, offended. Hawks lifted a hand, cutting in lightly. Let's not turn this into a contest. Big guy, we're trying to keep people calm. Thor looked at Hawks. Calm is earned by safety. Hawks' smile sharpened. And safety is earned by planning. Aizawa watched from the side, saying little. He already had his own plan forming, like a habit he hated but needed. All Might spoke gently. Thor, if you go out alone and the public fears you, villains will use that. Thor's gaze shifted to the window, where a distant skyline waited. I do not fear villains, Thor said. All Might nodded. I know, but we have to think about the people. Thor's face softened again. That, he said quietly. I understand. Nezu slid a clipboard toward him, almost like a joke. So, if you could fill out. Thor stared at the clipboard like it was an insult. Aizawa almost smirked. Almost. Thor pushed the clipboard back with 2 fingers. I swear an oath, Thor said. My name is Thor Odinson. I will not strike the innocent. I will not abandon those in danger. I will not hide when evil comes. Nezu blinked. That is not legally binding. Thor looked genuinely confused. It binds me. Hawks' smile flickered into something real for a second. Okay, that's actually kind of cool. Endeavor grunted. Doesn't help if he levels a city block. Thor's eyes flashed. I have fought among cities, Thor said, voice hard. I know how to aim. Aizawa believed him. That did not make Aizawa relax, because even aimed lightning was still lightning. The meeting ended in an uneasy shape that counted as agreement. Thor could assist in emergencies. He would be watched. He would not be given a hero rank. He would not be allowed to act like a lawless force. Thor accepted, but not like a man obeying. More like a warrior listening to allies, even if he disliked their rules. He left the room and walked out into the open air again. And above the city, the clouds began to turn. When the tear opened the second time, Deku felt it before he saw it. He was in a training hall, tightening his gloves, when the lights flickered. The air got cold for one breath, then hot the next. The building groaned like a ship in a storm. Students looked up. A low rumble rolled across the sky. Deku ran to a window. Above Musutafu, a circle of color bloomed again, Not as clean as before. This time it looked jagged, like a wound ripped open too fast. Wind poured out of it. Sirens started almost at once. Deku's phone buzzed with emergency alerts. Then the clouds beneath the tier twisted into a shape that made his stomach drop. It was a storm, but it wasn't just weather. It moved with purpose. Lightning flashed inside it, like eyes opening and closing, and it leaned toward the city. Thor stood on the field below, already looking up. His cape snapped in the wind. His grip tightened around Mjolnir. Aizawa was there too, scarf ready, eyes narrowed. Thor spoke, voice low, almost to himself. "It followed me." Aizawa's tone was sharp. "Explain." Thor didn't take his eyes off the sky. "Some things smell power," he said. "They come like wolves." Hawks's voice crackled through the comms. "We've got mass panic downtown. People are seeing the sky tear again. This is going to spiral." Deku's chest tightened. He could already imagine the videos, the screams, the headlines. The storm moved closer. Then it made a sound. Not thunder. A groan. Deep. Like the sky itself was angry. A chunk of lightning jumped from it and struck a radio tower. Metal exploded. Sparks rained down. People screamed below. Thor launched. He didn't run. He threw Mjolnir forward, grabbed the strap, and let it pull him into the air like a sling. He shot upward, cape trailing behind him like a red line. Deku's mouth fell open. He had seen heroes fly with quirks and gear. This was different. This was simple, like the rules didn't apply. Thor reached the edge of the living storm and swung. The hammer hit something solid inside the clouds. A shockwave spread across the sky in a ring. Clouds split like fabric. The storm recoiled, and then it pushed back. Wind slammed into Thor and tried to throw him down into the city. Thor braced in midair, muscles tight, like he was standing on an invisible floor. He spun Mjolnir once, and the wind shifted, redirected away from the buildings. Below, buildings shook but did not collapse. Deku felt his heart thumping hard. Thor wasn't just strong. He was careful. On the ground, pro-heroes moved into formation. Endeavor blazed forward, heat rolling off him. Todoroki appeared at the edge of the evacuation zone, ice spreading to create safe paths. Ida sprinted with groups of civilians, shouting orders. Aizawa barked into comms, voice cutting through chaos. "Evac teams, now. Keep eyes up. Do not look at the tier too long." Hawks flew low, fast, using his feathers to guide people away from falling debris. Overhead, the storm dipped again. Lightning struck the street in 3 places, not random. It was targeting clusters of people. Deku's stomach twisted. "It's hunting fear," he whispered. No one answered him, but he knew it was true. It wasn't striking empty roads. It was striking crowds. Thor saw it too. He raised Mjolnir high. Lightning answered him again, but this time it did not strike the ground. It struck the storm itself. A huge bolt tore down into the living cloud. The storm screamed, sound turning into a wave that made windows shatter. Deku flinched and covered his ears. When he looked back, he saw something impossible. The storm had a center, a core, a knot of black cloud where the lightning eyes gathered. Thor dove straight for it. Endeavor shouted from below, voice rough with shock. "He's going inside it." Thor hit the core like a missile. The sky lit up white. For a second, the storm expanded, huge and wild. The wind hit the city like a wall. Cars rocked. Signs snapped. People screamed louder. And with that fear, the storm got bigger. Deku realized it in the same moment Thor did. The more people panicked, the stronger it became. Thor burst out of the storm, cape scorched at the edge, armor sparking. He did not look hurt. He looked angry. But his eyes shifted down to the streets. He saw the crowds. He saw kids clutching parents. He saw heroes struggling to hold lines. His anger tightened, then changed shape. He shouted, voice like thunder, but clear enough to be words. "Hear me." The sound rolled across the city. It made people look up despite themselves. "I am not your enemy," Thor called. "Get to shelter. I will hold the sky." Some people froze. Some people ran again. But many people, maybe because heroes were there, maybe because the voice sounded certain, stopped screaming. They started moving with purpose. Deku saw it happen like a switch. Fear dropped a little, and the storm hesitated. Hawks flew up toward the nearest broadcast drone, feathers slicing the air. "We need messages, now. Calm instructions. No speculation. No God talk. Keep it simple." President Mike's voice boomed over emergency speakers a moment later, steady and loud. "Evacuate in an orderly line. Follow hero directions. Do not stop to film." Deku gritted his teeth and ran to help, joining students, guiding people into buildings. He kept his eyes on the sky between steps. Thor fought above them like a shield. He didn't trade punches like a normal fight. He controlled space. He shoved the storm away from hospitals. He pulled lightning into his hammer instead of letting it hit the ground. When the storm tried to drop wind spikes into the streets, Thor met them mid-air and broke them apart. Still, the entity learned. It stopped striking at random. It began to shape itself into long arms of cloud that reached for Thor like hands grabbing at a cape. It tried to wrap him, to choke him, to drag him down into the city where panic would feed it faster. Thor's jaw set. "Enough," he growled. He spun Mjolnir so fast it became a blur. Wind roared. A tight storm formed around him, controlled and sharp, like a moving wall. He drove that wall into the entity's core. The living storm buckled. Lightning eyes blinked out one by one. But the entity didn't die. It pulled back, retreating toward the tear in the sky like a wounded animal crawling to its den. Thor chased, not letting it escape freely. He caught it at the edge of the tear and slammed Mjolnir into the colored wound itself. The sky rang. The tear flickered. For a heartbeat, it looked like it might seal. Then the entity shoved through anyway, dragging pieces of cloud behind it like guts. Thor slammed the hammer again. This time the tear tightened, not closed but smaller. Strange marks flashed around the rim for a second, patterns like glowing scratches. Then the wind stopped. The living storm vanished through the gap. The tear shrank to a thin line of color and stayed there, trembling, like it didn't know whether to close or open wider. Thor hovered in front of it, chest rising and falling, cape snapping in the leftover air. Below, the city went quiet in waves. Sirens still wailed, but the screaming had mostly stopped. People looked up and filmed anyway. But with more awe than panic now, Thor looked down at them, and his face tightened. Not pride. Responsibility. He lowered himself toward the ground, landing hard enough to crack the pavement but not enough to throw anyone. Endeavor approached first, flames low but ready. Hawks landed nearby, eyes sharp. Aizawa walked up with his scarf loose, not aimed but not relaxed. Deku arrived behind them, breathing hard, hands dusty from guiding people. Thor looked at all of them. "It will return," he said. Hawks's voice was quiet. "Because of you?" Thor's eyes flashed, then softened. "It followed my power," he admitted. "But now it has tasted your world. It will not forget." Aizawa's gaze cut to the thin line of color still trembling in the sky. "And that tear?" Thor stared up, jaw tight. "That is not meant to be open," he said. "Not here." Nezu's voice came through a device someone held up, calm and bright even now. "We recorded the energy patterns, those marks around the tear. We will study them." Thor's head turned slightly, as if he could see Nezu through walls. "Study quickly," he said, "because whatever lives beyond that wound will study you too." Deku swallowed, looking at the sky. The line of color shimmered again, just once, like a blink. And in that blink, Deku felt something watching back. 3 days after the sky tore open, the city still sounded different. Sirens came and went like waves. Windows that had shattered were covered with boards. People walked faster than usual, like the air might break again if they slowed down. On screens, the same clip played over and over. A man in armor, a red cape, a hammer raised to the clouds, lightning bending like it was trained. Some people called him a miracle. Some people called him a weapon. Some people called him a warning. In the UA staff office, Shota Aizawa watched the clip with the sound off. He didn't need the shouting. He was watching details. The angle of the lightning, the way the stranger kept the blasts away from hospitals, the moment he yelled at the crowd and the crowd actually listened. Then he watched the part where fear surged again and the living storm swelled larger. Aizawa paused the video. That was the real problem. Not the hammer, not the strength, the reaction. You could punch a villain. You could tie them up. You couldn't tie up a whole city's fear. He tapped his pen once on the desk, then looked at the pile of printed forms someone had shoved into his workspace. They were all labeled with bright stamps and important words. Provisional Hero Registration, Power Hazard Declaration, Foreign Entity Risk Assessment. It made his eye twitch. Nezu's cheerful voice came from the doorway. "Good morning." Aizawa didn't look up. "Morning." Nezu walked in, hands behind his back, smile fixed. It was the same smile he used when he was excited and when he was worried. "The commission will arrive at noon," Nezu said. Aizawa finally looked up. "They want to see him." "They want to own him," Aizawa replied. Nezu's ears flicked. "They want to control public panic. They think that comes from paperwork." Aizawa stared at the forms. "Paper doesn't stop lightning." "No," Nezu agreed, "but it can direct where the lightning is allowed to stand." Aizawa leaned back, tired. "That's gonna go well." Nezu's smile didn't move, but his eyes sharpened. "We need to manage this carefully. Thor is cooperative, in his own way." Aizawa thought of the way Thor had pushed the clipboard back and offered an oath like a contract. Cooperative, yes. Controllable, no. Aizawa stood. "Where is he?" Nezu tilted his head toward the training field. "He has been outside every morning, watching the sky." Aizawa's scarf slid over his shoulders as he walked out. Thor stood alone on the field, feet planted like roots. He held Mjolnir at his side. He wasn't swinging it. He wasn't calling storms. He was listening. He could feel this world's weather the way a sailor feels the sea. The wind here was young. The clouds here were thin, like they didn't know what they were capable of. But the wound in the sky was not thin. It was quiet now, mostly closed, yet not healed. Thor could still sense it, like a sore spot in the air. He lifted his face to the pale morning light. In his mind, he saw Asgard's wide halls and the clear roads of the realm between worlds. He remembered the pull that had yanked him away like a hook. That pull had not been random. Something had reached. Something had wanted. He hated not knowing what. Footsteps approached. Thor didn't turn until the last second. He already knew it was Aizawa. The man moved like a shadow with purpose. "You're being summoned," Aizawa said. Thor's brow tightened. "By whom?" "The Hero Public Safety Commission," Aizawa said. Thor frowned deeper. "More rulers?" "More managers," Aizawa answered. Thor breathed out slowly. "I saved your people." Aizawa's voice stayed flat. "And now they want to decide what that means." Thor's jaw clenched. He had dealt with kings and councils. He could play politics when needed. But this felt like a net being thrown over a storm. He walked with Aizawa, cape brushing the grass. "If they ask me to swear again, I will." Aizawa glanced at him. "They won't accept an oath." Thor's eyes narrowed. "Then they do not understand honor." Aizawa didn't argue. He only said, "They understand fear, and they think they can use it." That word hit Thor hard. Fear. It was not new to him. Fear had followed him on battlefields, in villages, in realms that had been burning. But here, fear had a strange shape. It wore suits. It spoke in careful sentences. It hid behind safety while it demanded control. Thor's grip on Mjolnir tightened. He would not become a tool for cowards, and he would not abandon people who needed him. Both truths pulled in opposite directions, like chains on his arms. At noon, the commission arrived with polished shoes, clean suits, and guarded smiles. Hawk stood near the door, arms relaxed, wings tucked in. His face was friendly. His eyes were not. All Might stood further back, posture strong but shoulders slightly slumped, like he was holding up two worlds at once. Endeavor was there too, arms crossed, flame low. He looked like he'd rather fight a monster than sit in a room. Thor entered last. The moment he stepped in, the air shifted. Not because he did anything, but because everyone remembered what he could do. A woman with a thin tablet smiled brightly. "Thank you for coming. We appreciate your cooperation." Thor studied her like she was a messenger, not a leader. "You asked. I came." Another official cleared his throat. "We need to discuss your status in Japan." Thor's brow lifted. "Status?" "Yes," the official said. "If you are going to operate as a hero, you must be registered. We must assign you oversight. A team. Rules of engagement." Thor looked at Nezu as if checking if this was a joke. Nezu's smile was polite. "They are serious." Thor looked back at the officials. "I will help those in danger." The woman tapped her tablet. "We understand. But you cannot act without authorization. It could cause panic, property damage, international conflict." Thor's eyes hardened. A child was nearly crushed by stone. "I did not ask authorization." The official's smile thinned. "That is exactly what concerns us." For a heartbeat, the room felt colder. Endeavor's flame flickered higher, like his temper agreed with Thor more than he wanted to admit. Hawks spoke in a smooth tone. "Let's keep this practical. The public is scared. They saw a man drop from the sky and bend lightning. They need something simple to hold on to." Thor's gaze snapped to Hawks. "They need safety." Hawks nodded, still calm. "Safety is part of it. So is clarity. Names matter. Stories matter." The woman turned her tablet so Thor could see it. There were options on the screen, like they were choosing a brand. "Suggested hero name," she said. "Thunder Lord. Storm Savior. God of..." Thor's voice cut through like a hammer strike. "No." The woman blinked. "No?" "My name is Thor," he said. "Thor Odinson." The official leaned forward. "That is not verifiable." Thor stared at him. "I do not become someone else because your paper cannot read me." Aizawa watched the officials' faces tighten. They were not used to someone refusing their system without fear. All Might stepped in gently. "Perhaps we can find a middle path. Thor can agree to certain guidelines, and the commission can." The official raised a hand. "All Might, with respect, this is bigger than goodwill." Thor turned his head slowly, eyes sharp. "Bigger than goodwill is tyranny." The room went silent again. Nezu's voice remained calm, like a teacher guiding a debate away from a fight. "Thor is not here to overthrow anyone. He is here because an event brought him. We should focus on preventing another tier." The woman's smile returned, forced. "We will, after we establish control." Thor's hand tightened on Mjolnir's strap. Aizawa saw it. Hawk saw it too. Hawks's feathers twitched just slightly, ready to move if needed. Thor took a breath. Then instead of shouting, he spoke with slow certainty. "I will not sign to become your weapon," Thor said. "But I will promise this. If danger comes, I will face it. If your heroes stand with me, I will not push them aside. I will protect this realm as I would protect my own." The woman looked relieved for half a second until she realized he still hadn't agreed to their rules. "That is not enough," the official said, voice tight. Thor leaned forward, eyes like thunderclouds. "It must be." All Might met Thor's gaze, and Thor felt the man's quiet strength. Not the strength of muscles now, but the strength of carrying people's hope until it hurt. All Might gave Thor a small nod, like he was asking him to hold steady. Thor leaned back again. The meeting ended with nothing resolved. That was the truth. But outside the room, the world did not wait for meetings. Deku sat on his bed that night, scrolling through videos with shaking hands. He hated looking, but he needed to know what people were saying. Some comments were thankful. Some were cruel. One clip had a title in big angry letters, claiming Thor's lightning had attacked civilians. It showed a bolt hitting near a crowd. People screamed. The clip ended right before heroes pulled people to safety. Deku watched it twice, then found a different angle from another account. In that version, the bolt had struck the street away from the crowd, and the shockwave had pushed people back from falling glass. The same moment. Two stories. His chest tightened. This wasn't about truth anymore. It was about what people wanted to believe. Bakugo's voice came from the hallway, loud as always. "Stop watching trash." Deku flinched. Bakugo stood at the door, arms crossed, eyes sharp. Deku tried to steady his voice. "People are scared." Bakugo snorted. "People are always scared. That's why we exist." Deku swallowed. Thor doesn't fit their rules. Bakugo's lip curled. "Good. Rules are for the weak." Deku stared at him. "You don't mean that." Bakugo paused, then looked away like he was annoyed at himself. "I mean, it's stupid to waste time with paperwork when the sky is ripping open." Deku nodded slowly. For once, Bakugo's anger had a point. But Deku also knew what Aizawa would say. Paperwork didn't stop lightning, but it could decide who got blamed when lightning came. Far from you. In a room that did not appear on any map, All for One watched the same clips with a different kind of calm. He did not flinch at lightning. He did not feel awe. He saw an equation. A new piece had entered the board, a piece that could smash most pieces without effort. So you did not smash it head on. You turned the board against it. Shigaraki sat nearby, hunched forward, fingers twitching, eyes burning. "I want to kill him," Shigaraki said. All for One's voice was gentle. "You want to prove something." "I want to break their faces," Shigaraki hissed. They look up at him now, like they looked up at All Might. All for One's smile was quiet in the dark. Yes, they are already building a new story, but stories can be edited. Shigaraki glared. "He's too strong." All for One tapped the screen, pausing on Thor, shouting, "Hear me." "Strength," he said, "is not the only lever." He tapped again, showing the crowd calming for a moment, the storm hesitating. All he did was speak. All for One said softly, "He understands hearts. That is his weakness." Shigaraki's mouth twisted. "He thinks he's a hero." All for One nodded. "Then we will punish him for acting like one." He leaned closer, voice like a lesson. "Give the public a reason to fear him," he said. "Give the commission a reason to cage him. Give the heroes a reason to doubt him." Shigaraki's eyes narrowed. "How?" All for One's smile widened slightly. "By making his best trait hurt him," he answered. "Make his protection look like destruction." The staged incident happened 2 days later. It began like a normal villain chase. A group of criminals ran through a busy market district, firing blasts to slow heroes down. People screamed and scattered. Cameras rose. Hawks was nearby. He guided civilians away, feathers moving like hands. Endeavor arrived in heat and rage, blasting the criminals into a corner. Then the air above them changed. A low rumble rolled through the clouds. A thin line of color flickered high in the sky, too fast for most people to notice. But Thor noticed. He felt it like a tug on his ribs. He shot into the air, pulled by Mjolnir, cape snapping behind him. When he arrived, he saw the problem in an instant. A chunk of unstable storm energy hungry had formed above the market. It wasn't the full entity from before. It was a piece, a shard, and it was falling. If it hit, the blast would tear through the street like a bomb. Thor moved without thinking. He threw himself under it and raised Mjolnir to catch the strike. Lightning slammed down. The street flashed white. The shockwave shoved people back. Stalls toppled. A sign ripped free and flew. Thor held the storm above his head like a weight he refused to drop. Then he guided it upward, away from the crowd, and crushed it in the sky. It broke into sparks and smoke. The danger was gone. And the next second, the screams got louder. Not because anyone was hurt, because a video was already spreading. A video that showed only the flash, only the stalls falling, only the sign flying. It did not show the storm shard. It did not show what would have happened if Thor hadn't been there. A voice in the video shouted, "He did it!" Someone else screamed, "Monster!" Thor landed hard, scanning for injured people. A little girl cried, not because she was hurt, but because she was terrified. She pointed at him with shaking fingers. "Don't," she sobbed. "Don't make the sky angry." Thor's chest tightened. He knelt, trying to make himself smaller. "I did not," he began. Her mother pulled her away fast, eyes wide, as if Thor might strike again. Thor froze. He had been called many things. Monster was not new, but hearing it from a child made it feel like a blade sliding under armor. Endeavor strode up, face hard. "You need to stop showing up like this." Thor snapped his head toward Endeavor. "Like what? Like a shield?" Endeavor's jaw clenched. "Like a disaster." Hawks landed between them, hands raised. His smile was still there, but it looked tired now. "This is what I warned about," Hawk said quietly. "The story is turning." Thor's hands tightened into fists. "I saved them," he said. Hawks nodded. "I know, but they don't. Not from that angle." Aizawa arrived next, scarf already moving, eyes sharp and angry. He didn't look at Thor first. He looked at the roof lines, the alley mouths, the people holding phones. "Someone planted that," Aizawa said, voice low. Thor stared at him. "Planted?" Aizawa nodded once. "That wasn't random. That was bait." Thor's eyes lifted to the clouds again. He felt the wrongness fade, like something had been dropped on purpose and then pulled away. He felt a cold understanding settle inside him. This world's villains were not only fighters, they were storytellers, and they were writing him as the villain. That night, Thor stood in a quiet corridor at UA with All Might. The building was calmer than the city. Students were asleep. The halls smelled like clean floors and old posters. All Might leaned against the wall, arms folded, looking smaller than he used to look, even in his own school. Thor stared down at his hammer. "It is strange," Thor said, voice rough, "to save and be hated for it." All Might's smile was sad. "It happens." Thor looked up, eyes hard. "Then why do you keep smiling?" All Might's eyes softened. "Because if I stop smiling, the fear wins faster." Thor's throat tightened. He didn't like that answer, but he respected it. All Might looked at Thor carefully. "You are used to being a warrior." "I am," Thor said. "This world needs warriors," All Might said. "But it also needs symbols. People cling to something when the ground shakes." Thor's gaze drifted to the window, where city lights blinked. "A symbol," Thor said slowly, "can become a chain." All Might nodded. "Yes, that's the danger." Thor's grip tightened on Mjolnir. "They want to chain me." All Might didn't deny it. "Some do." Thor's voice dropped. "If I leave, the wound stays. If I stay, they cage me. If I fight their cage, I become what they fear." All Might pushed off the wall, stepping closer. "Then don't fight the cage, fight the wound." Thor's eyes snapped to him. All Might pointed upward, toward the sky they couldn't see through the ceiling. "That tier is the center of this. Close it, and the fear has less fuel." Thor breathed in, slow. It was simple. It was hard. It was right. He nodded once. "Then I will." All Might's smile returned, smaller but real. "And you won't have to do it alone." Thor's face didn't soften, but something in him steadied. He looked down the hall toward the sleeping students. "Your children," he said, voice low. "They are being pulled into war." All Might's jaw tightened. "They already were." Thor's eyes flashed. "Then I will not let their courage be punished." All Might held his gaze. "That's why you're here." In the shadow of the hallway, Aizawa watched for a moment, then turned away. He already had a bad feeling. Because villains didn't stop after one bait. They escalated. And next time, they wouldn't just try to make Thor look dangerous. They would try to make Thor choose between saving strangers and saving the people he had started to care about. 2 mornings later, Nezu rolled a small device onto a table like it was a toy. It wasn't. Mei Hatsume, goggles on her head and grease on her hands, leaned over it with a grin so wide it looked painful. Okay, she said fast. "So it picks up the weird sky scratch energy, like a metal detector. But for what is that stuff?" Aizawa stared at it. "That's a technical term." Mei beamed. "Thank you." Nezu's smile was pleased. "It reacts to the residue that flashes around the tear, the rune-like patterns." Thor stood nearby, watching. He didn't understand the tiny parts, but he understood the goal. Will it lead us to the wound? Thor asked. May nodded. It'll lead us to where the energy is being used. If someone is carrying it, building with it, or making something with it. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. Which means, Nezu finished, someone is collecting it. Thor's face hardened. Then they will stop. May lifted a finger. One more thing. It will beep a lot. Like, a lot. So don't throw it if it annoys you. Thor blinked. Beep? May made a little noise. Beep. Thor's mouth twitched like he almost smiled. Aizawa didn't. Because now the problem had a direction. And direction meant a confrontation. Thor chose his team the way a warrior chooses who stands at his side. Not by rank, by heart. Deku begged to come without saying the words beg. He stood straight, hands clenched, eyes bright with worry and determination. I can help, he said. I notice patterns. I can guide people. And I trust you. Thor looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. You will stay near me. Todoroki stepped forward next, calm as winter. My ice can block roots. My fire can keep people warm if we evacuate. Thor nodded again. You think before you strike. Good. Bakugo pushed in, scowling. I'm not staying behind while you go play Thunder King. Thor's eyes flicked to Bakugo. You are loud. Bakugo snarled. So are you. For a second, it looked like Thor might laugh. Instead, he said, then use your loudness to protect, not to prove. Bakugo's jaw tightened like he hated that it made sense. Aizawa stepped in last. I'm coming. Thor turned. You do not trust me. Aizawa met his eyes. I trust you more than the people trying to use you, and I don't trust whoever is collecting that residue. Thor nodded once. Then walk. Hawks was already on standby above. Not officially part of the group, but never far. Because this wasn't just a mission. It was a political bomb moving through the country. The device began beeping before they even left you. It chirped softly at first, then louder as they passed certain corners of the city. It reacted near damaged rooftops from the first storm. It reacted near broken power lines. It reacted near places where fear had spiked. Then, as the sun lowered, the beeps pulled them toward the coastline, away from bright streets, away from cameras, toward old warehouses and empty lots that smelled like salt and rust. Deku swallowed as they stood on a hill overlooking the area. He could see the sea, dark, flat, patient. Below, an industrial zone sprawled like a maze. Some buildings were abandoned, some weren't. May's device beeped in Deku's hands like a nervous bird. It's strong here, Deku whispered. Todoroki's eyes narrowed. Someone is hiding it. Bakugo cracked his knuckles. Good, I'm bored. Aizawa's scarf shifted, ready. Quiet. We don't know what's inside. Thor stared at the warehouses, face hard. He could feel it now without the device. A wrong pressure, like a storm trying to grow in a box. He raised Mjolnir slightly, not calling lightning, just ready. Stay behind me, he said. Bakugo scoffed. Like hell. Thor didn't argue. He just started walking down the hill. The others followed. Inside the warehouse, the air was warm in a bad way. It wasn't heat from machines. It was heat like a fever. Lights hung from chains. Cables snaked across the floor. Crates were stacked into walls. People in masks moved between stations, carrying vials and metal cases. On a table in the center, something glowed faintly. Not like a light bulb. Like a cut in the air, sealed inside glass. Nezu's device screamed now. Deku's hands tightened around it. That's it. Aizawa's eyes went red. He scanned the masked workers, looking for quirks to shut down if a fight started. Thor stepped forward, cape brushing the dusty floor. One of the masked men noticed them and froze. Then someone shouted, "It's him!" Panic burst through the room like fire in dry grass. Men grabbed weapons. A few bolted for doors. Someone slammed a button. A metal cage dropped from the ceiling, trying to trap Thor. The bars hit Thor's shoulders and bent. Thor didn't even flinch. He lifted the cage with one arm and tossed it aside like it was a bad joke. Bakugo's eyes widened for half a second before his face snapped back into anger. Yeah, okay, that's... Aizawa cut him off. Focus. From behind a stack of crates, a door opened. Something walked out. At first, Deku thought it was another Nomu. Then he saw the marks. Dark lines like scratches ran across its skin in patterns that flashed with faint color. The same kind of pattern they had seen around the tier. The creature's chest rose and fell like it was breathing hard, but it didn't look tired. It looked hungry. Its head tilted toward Thor, and the air in the room grew heavier. Todoroki's voice was low. That thing feels wrong. Deku's mind raced. If it's using the tear energy, it might not follow normal quirk rules. The creature moved. It didn't charge like most brute monsters. It slid across the floor in a blur, then snapped upward, fist aiming for Thor's jaw. Thor caught the punch. The impact cracked the concrete under Thor's feet. Thor didn't move. He stared at the creature's arm, then at its face. "You are made," Thor said, voice cold. "Not born." The creature snarled and its arm changed shape. Bones and muscle twisted like clay, turning into a thick, hammer-like limb that slammed down again. Thor blocked with Mjolnir. The clash rang through the warehouse like a bell. Crates jumped. Workers screamed and fled. Bakugo blasted forward, explosions popping in tight bursts to avoid hitting civilians. "Move, you ugly!" The creature's head turned toward Bakugo and its shoulder split open like a mouth. A burst of compressed air fired out, slamming Bakugo sideways into a stack of crates. Wood exploded. Bakugo grunted, caught himself mid-air, and blasted back to his feet with a furious snarl. "Oh, you want to play?" Aizawa's eyes locked on the creature, erasure pushing hard. Nothing changed. Aizawa's stomach sank. He couldn't shut it down. Not with his quirk. Thor saw Aizawa's expression and understood without words. Thor stepped forward, voice loud enough to cut through panic. "Students, evacuate the workers. Leave this creature to me." Bakugo snapped. "Don't order me." Thor shot him a look that was not cruel, but absolute. Bakugo gritted his teeth, then cursed and darted away, grabbing a masked worker by the collar and shoving him toward the exit. "Get out before you die." Todoroki spread ice across the floor in smooth lanes, creating clear paths away from the fight. "This way," he called, voice steady. Deku dragged people along, guiding them behind ice walls, using Mei's beeping device as a map toward danger and away from it at the same time. The creature attacked Thor again. It changed every time. A punch became a blade. A blade became a whip. A whip became a heavy club. Thor countered without panic, adjusting his stance like he was reading a new weapon each second. But he didn't unleash a full storm. Not in a warehouse. Not with people running close by. That was the pressure. If he fought like he could, the building would become dust. So Thor fought like a shield again. The creature wrapped an arm around Thor's waist, trying to crush him. Thor's muscles tightened, and he pulled the arm off like peeling a rope away. He slammed the creature into the floor. Concrete cratered. The creature bounced up, body already repairing. It smiled. A real smile. Too wide, too wrong. Deku saw it from behind an ice wall and felt cold inside. It enjoyed adapting. It enjoyed surviving. It enjoyed making Thor hold back. Aizawa moved along the edge of the fight, scarf snapping to pull falling beams away from evac routes. He spotted a masked scientist scrambling toward the glowing table. Aizawa lunged, scarf wrapping the man's ankle and yanking him down. The scientist hit the floor hard and hissed, trying to crawl away. Aizawa pinned him with a knee. "Who are you working for?" The man laughed, coughing. "You think it matters?" Aizawa's eyes narrowed. "Answer." The scientist's gaze flicked toward Thor, then toward the creature. "You can't stop this," he said. "Fear will feed it. Even him." Aizawa's stomach tightened. "Fear?" The scientist smiled with broken teeth. "The storm loves fear. The shard loves fear. And now we have a pet that can survive the thunder. Aizawa felt his blood run colder. This wasn't just people stealing energy. This was someone building a bridge between fear and power, and using Thor as the spark. The creature tried something new. It stopped attacking Thor's body and started attacking the room. It slammed its reshaped arm into support beams. The warehouse groaned. Dust rained down. A steel column bent. If the roof fell, it would crush anyone still inside. Thor's eyes flashed. He grabbed the creature by the throat and lifted it clean off the ground. The creature's arms flailed, changing shape, trying to cut him. Thor ignored the blades, slicing sparks off his armor. He walked, carrying it, toward the center of the open space. Then he threw it upward. It smashed into the ceiling and punched through, breaking into the open air above the warehouse. Thor shot after it like a cannonball, pulled by Mjolnir. Outside, the sea wind hit his face. Clouds were gathering again, too fast. The creature hovered for a second, not flying with wings, but with wrong energy pushing it up. Thor caught it midair and slammed it down onto the rooftop. The roof buckled, but Thor kept his feet planted. He raised Mjolnir. The sky rumbled. A bolt of lightning came down, clean and straight, and struck the creature's chest. The blast was bright enough to turn the world white for a heartbeat. The creature screamed, not in pain, in anger. Its rune-like marks flared, catching the lightning like it was drinking it. Thor's eyes widened. It wasn't just surviving. It was learning how to eat his power. Below, Aizawa ran out with the others. Looking up, Deku's chest tightened as he saw the lightning hit and the creature not die. Bakugo stood in the open, staring, lips parted. Todoroki's gaze sharpened. It's adapting to him. Thor realized it too. He lowered Mjolnir slightly, jaw clenched. If lightning fed it, lightning was the wrong tool. So Thor did what made him Thor. He fought with his hands, his weight, his will. He grabbed the creature, twisted, and drove it off the roof and out over the empty lot away from the evac routes. They fell together, fast. Thor turned in the air and hit the ground first, absorbing the impact like a mountain landing. The creature slammed down on top of him and tried to crush his throat. Thor's hand clamped around its wrist. His other fist drove into its ribcage. Once, twice. Each punch sounded like a cannon. The creature's chest caved, then repaired. It laughed again. Thor's eyes burned with controlled fury. "You are not a warrior," Thor growled. "You are a trick." The creature's head tilted. "And you are a story," it rasped, voice like gravel. "They will hate you. They will fear you. And then you will feed us." Thor froze for half a beat. Because that voice, it didn't sound like a dumb monster. It sounded like someone speaking through it. Like a message. Aizawa heard it too and felt his stomach drop. This was not just science. This was a plan. Thor pushed the creature off him and stood, towering over it. He did not call lightning. He called something else. The wind. Not a huge storm. Not a city-wide blast. A tight, controlled burst that spun dust and debris into a ring around the creature, trapping it like a moving wall. The creature tried to break through, but every time it lunged, the wind slammed it back. Bakugo blasted in from the side, sweat flying, eyes wild. "I'll blow it apart." Thor snapped, "No." Bakugo froze mid-charge, furious. "Why not?" Thor pointed with Mjolnir. Not at Bakugo, but at the warehouse behind them. "Because it wants you to." Bakugo blinked, confused. Thor's voice stayed hard. "It wants chaos. It wants fear. If you explode this place, the city will see only fire." Bakugo's teeth clenched, his hands shook. It hurt him to hold back. But he did. Todoroki spread a wall of ice behind the creature's wind trap, creating a second layer. Deku moved beside Aizawa, breathing hard. "We need to end it without feeding it." Aizawa's eyes narrowed, and without letting it escape. Thor stared at the creature, then at the glowing marks on its skin. He remembered the tear's rim, the scratches, the patterns. He spoke slowly, like he was choosing the safest weapon. "Nezu," Thor said into the comm device. "Can your device contain the residue?" Nezu's voice crackled back, bright even now. In theory, but not a large amount. Thor looked at the creature again. Then he made a choice. He planted Mjolnir on the ground. The hammer thudded and the air seemed to settle around it. Thor reached out with both hands not to the sky, but to the creature's rune marks. He didn't touch them. He pulled. Aizawa felt his skin prickle. Deku felt his hair lift. The glowing scratches on the creature's body began to peel away like light being scraped off. The creature screamed. Truly, this time. Its body weakened, losing the wrong strength that had been holding it together. Thor's face tightened with effort. Sweat beaded on his brow. Not because it was physically heavy, but because he was wrestling something that didn't want to be moved. The rune energy ripped free in twisting strands, like the last breath of a storm. Mei's device, still in Deku's hand, shrieked and then shut off with a pop. Deku yelped. It died. Nezu's voice came through, alarmed. It overloaded. Don't let that energy disperse. Thor clenched his fists. He compressed the strands into a tight sphere of crackling light. Then he threw it upward and struck it with his palm like he was slapping a glowing ball into the sky. It burst above them in silent sparks. No shockwave. No thunder. Just light fading like embers. The creature on the ground convulsed, then went still. Not dead, not destroyed, but shut down, like a puppet with its strings cut. Aizawa breathed out. Slow. You pulled it out. Thor's face was grim. It was not its own. Deku stared at the creature, heart racing. Someone used the tear energy to make it stronger. Todoroki looked toward the sea. So the tear isn't just a sky problem, it's a weapon now. Bakugo's fists trembled. Whoever did this is hiding. Aizawa looked at the pinned scientist he had grabbed earlier. The man was gone. The scarf lay on the ground, sliced clean through. Aizawa's eyes widened. He scanned the rooftops, the shadows, the alley mouths. No one. The escape was too clean, too planned. Thor stared at the place where the scientist had been, then up at the clouds. They were gathering faster again. A thin line of color flickered high above the sea. Not one line. Two. Thor's stomach sank. It is spreading, he said, voice low. Deku's throat went dry. Multiple weak points. Aizawa's mind raced. If they can trigger shards anywhere. A loud rumble cut him off. Above the coastline, the sky blinked with color again. Wider than a line now, like an eye opening. Wind poured out. And for a heartbeat, Deku felt it. Something looking down. Not curious. Hungry. Thor stepped forward, cape lifting in the rising wind. His face was calm, but his eyes were bright with a promise. Get the civilians farther, Thor said. Now. Hawks' voice came through the comms, sharp. News choppers are already coming. People saw the lightning flash out here. Bakugo snapped. Of course they did. Thor didn't turn. Then we must be faster than the story. Todoroki nodded and moved at once, ice spreading to guide any nearby workers away from the zone. Deku followed, heart hammering. Aizawa stayed beside Thor for a moment, watching the sky crack open again. You're becoming the center of this, Aizawa said quietly. Thor's jaw tightened. I did not choose that. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. But you're choosing what you do next. Thor looked at him, and there was something steady there, something that didn't need approval. I choose to heal the wound, Thor said, even if they hate me for bleeding while I do it. Aizawa swallowed, then nodded once. Then I'll keep people alive while you try, he said. Thor lifted Mjolnir. The hammer felt heavier in the air now, like the sky itself was resisting. Thor didn't care. He launched upward toward the new tear above the sea, moving like a red spear into the wind. Below, the team watched him rise. Not as a hero on a poster, not as a weapon on a leash, as a guardian stepping into a fight that was bigger than any single world. And somewhere, far away, someone smiled because the next move was already set. Not a direct battle, a personal one. 2 weeks later, the school had learned a new kind of weather. It did not start in the clouds. It started in the news. It started in the way people flinched when thunder rolled, even when there was no rain. Izuku Midoriya stood at the edge of Training Ground Beta, notebook tucked under his arm. He could hear Bakugo yelling somewhere behind him. He could hear Present Mike calling out drills. He could hear the metal clack of support gear. And in the middle of it all, he could hear something else. A deep, steady voice that made even the wind seem like it was paying attention. Again, the man said. Thor Odinson stood barehanded on the dirt, red cape hanging loose. His armor was still there, but he had taken off the heavy parts that made him look like a walking war statue. He looked more like a soldier at rest. He held no hammer right now. Mjolnir sat 10 steps away, planted on the ground like a marker that said, "Do not forget what I am." Bakugo lunged forward with a sharp burst, trying to tag Thor's shoulder. Thor turned his body just a little and caught Bakugo's wrist. Not hard enough to break it, just enough to stop him. Bakugo snarled, "Don't grab me like that." Thor's eyes were calm. Then strike with purpose, not rage. Bakugo yanked free and tried again, faster. Thor stepped aside, and Bakugo's momentum carried him forward. Thor tapped Bakugo's back with 2 fingers. Bakugo froze, teeth clenched. Thor's voice stayed even. "If I wished, that would be the moment you fall." Bakugo spun, fists shaking. "I'm not here to learn manners." Thor nodded once. "Then you will learn them the painful way." Bakugo's face reddened, but he did not explode. Not like he used to. He was learning control, even if it hurt his pride. Todoroki watched nearby with a quiet focus. Deku could tell he was studying Thor's footwork more than his power. Aizawa watched from the shade like he always did, arms crossed, scarf loose but ready. Deku scribbled in his notebook. "He teaches like a warrior, not like a coach. He wants you to survive first, win second." The air above the training field rumbled softly. Deku looked up. The sky was clear, but the rumble came anyway. Thor's head turned, sharp. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. He touched his earpiece. "Nezu?" Aizawa asked. Nezu's voice crackled through. "We have a spike, not in the city center. It's moving." Deku's stomach tightened. "Another shard?" Nezu hesitated for a fraction of a second, and that scared Deku more than a loud answer. "Not a shard," Nezu said. "A pattern. Like the rim marks. Like something is dragging a weak point along the air." Thor's jaw tightened. "A moving wound." Bakugo scoffed, but his eyes had changed. He was listening now. Aizawa's voice turned hard. "Location," Nezu answered quickly. "Downtown corridor, near a public square. Cameras everywhere." Hawks's voice cut in next, sharp and light at the same time. "And there's an event there today. Kids, families, food trucks. They'll panic fast if the sky does anything weird." Aizawa didn't like the word kids mixed with panic. He looked at Thor. "We move." Thor didn't hesitate. He walked to Mjolnir, wrapped his hand around the handle, and lifted it like it weighed nothing. Then he glanced at Deku. "You," Thor said. Deku stiffened. "Me?" "You have eyes that see truth beneath noise," Thor said. "Stay close and tell me what the people feel." Deku swallowed. "Okay." Bakugo shoved in. "I'm going too." Thor didn't argue this time. He only said, "Then follow orders." Bakugo's mouth opened to fight back, then shut. That alone was weird enough to make Deku blink. They moved, and as they did, Aizawa's phone buzzed with a new message. He glanced at it once and felt his patience burn. Another stack of forms, another demand from the commission. Final notice: unregistered entity must not engage public operations. Aizawa didn't show it to anyone. He only slid the phone back into his pocket and muttered under his breath. "Paper is going to get someone killed." The public square was bright and loud when they arrived. There were balloons. There were booths. There were hero mascots smiling for photos. It looked like a world that wanted to pretend it was safe. Then the air shifted. Deku felt it first as a pressure in his chest, like the moment before a big storm hits, when the world goes still. People looked up. A thin line of color shimmered across the sky like a scratch in glass. A few people pointed. A few laughed nervously. Most grabbed their phones. Deku's heart hammered. "Please don't," he whispered, mostly to the sky. Thor stepped forward, calm but ready. The line widened. Not fully. Not like the first tier. This was smaller, but it moved, sliding across the air as if someone was pulling it like a zipper. And behind it, clouds began to gather from nothing. A black knot formed. Lightning flickered inside it like eyes blinking open. Panic jumped through the crowd. Not all at once. It started with one scream, then another, then a wave. The knot in the sky swelled. Thor's eyes narrowed. "It grows with fear." Deku nodded fast, voice tight. "Yes. It's feeding." Bakugo cursed. "So we just tell people to stop being scared?" Aizawa snapped. "We manage it. Hawks." Hawks shot upward, feathers already flying out like a net to guide people. On it. Todoroki spread ice in clean lines, creating lanes that turned a messy crowd into a moving flow. "This way. No pushing." Deku ran beside a group of kids and pointed them toward an alley that led to a shelter zone. "Hold hands, stay together." Above them, the knot of storm began to drip lightning. A bolt struck a light pole. Sparks rained down. Screams got louder. The knot swelled again. Thor launched. He shot up like a red comet, Mjolnir pulling him through the air. Wind exploded outward, but he angled it away from the densest crowd. He reached the moving tier and slammed Mjolnir near its edge. The sky rang like metal. The tier shuddered, then slid again, trying to escape his strike. Thor followed, swinging again and again, not wildly, but with precise blows that pinned the tier in place. The knot in the cloud screamed with thunder. Then it pushed down. A limb of cloud dropped like a giant arm and tried to slap Thor out of the air. Thor caught it. His hands sank into storm like he was grabbing a living thing. Lightning crawled over his arms. It should have cooked a human. Thor's face tightened. He didn't scream. He only grunted and shoved back. He forced the cloud arm upward, away from the rooftops. Then he spoke, voice loud enough to be heard through the wind. "Hear me." The crowd below flinched and looked up. Thor hovered above them like a warning sign and a shield at once. "I will not let the sky take you," he called. "Move with your heroes. Do not trample each other. Help the small ones first." His words hit the crowd like a steady hand on a shaking shoulder. Some people still panicked, but many listened. Fear dropped a little. The knot in the sky hesitated. Deku felt it, like the monster had lost a bite of food. "Keep it calm," Deku shouted. "We're okay. Follow the lanes." Aizawa moved through the crowd like a ghost, scarf snapping to pull fallen boards away, eyes scanning for the real cause. Because he didn't believe this was random anymore. And he was right. On a rooftop, 3 figures stood with devices that glowed faintly with the same rune-like marks they had seen before. They weren't trying to fight the heroes. They were trying to film. They were trying to make angles that looked terrible. One of them lifted a small canister and threw it into the square. It burst with a loud crack and a flash. Not a bomb. A fear trigger. People screamed again. The knot in the sky swelled. Aizawa's eyes went cold. He launched his scarf, yanked the rooftop figure forward, and slammed him down hard enough to end the trick. The man laughed anyway. "You can't stop it," he coughed. "He makes it worse just by being seen." Aizawa pinned him. "Who sent you?" The man's eyes glittered. "A king," he whispered. Aizawa felt his stomach turn. Not the commission's kind of king. A worse kind. Thor felt the tear jerk sideways, like it was trying to escape his grip. He slammed Mjolnir again and forced it to hold. But he could also feel something else now. A pull. Not from the tear itself. From below the city. From underground spaces and hidden rooms. Like someone had planted more weak points. Like they were building a path. Thor's jaw tightened. "This is guided," he muttered. The storm knot above him twisted, and a shape began to form inside it. Not a full body, not yet. But a core. A dark center that looked like a mouth opening. Thor's grip tightened on Mjolnir. If that thing fully came through, this world's heroes would not be ready for it. They were brave. They were strong in their own way. But this was beyond quirks. This was a hunger. Thor dove into the knot. Lightning slammed into his armor. Wind tried to rip his cape away. The pressure felt like being underwater and on fire at the same time. He pushed through and found the core. A black sphere, pulsing. It turned toward him. Aware. It tried to speak without words. Thor heard it in his bones. Give. Fear. More. Thor's eyes burned. No, he growled. He raised Mjolnir and struck. The impact ripped a ring of clean air through the cloud, punching a hole that showed blue sky behind it. The core recoiled. But it didn't retreat. It reached out and grabbed him with storm limbs that felt like ropes made of knives. Thor's muscles locked. He could tear free with raw power. But if he did it wrong, the blast could hit the ground and start a panic wave that would feed the core again. So he did something harder. He held still. He breathed. He focused on control. He turned his body just enough to pull the storm limbs away from the square and over empty rooftops. Then he ripped free. The cloud limbs snapped like wet cloth. The core screamed with thunder. And below, the crowd began to calm again because the heroes were keeping them moving. For a moment, it worked. For a moment, the knot shrank. Then the city screens changed. Every billboard, every public screen, every store TV, they all flickered to the same clip. A close-up of Thor from the market incident, edited to look like he had attacked civilians. A voiceover shouted, "He's the reason the sky is breaking." Panic surged, like a match dropped into gasoline. The knot swelled instantly. Thor felt it and cursed. Down below, Deku's face went pale as he saw the screens. "No," Deku whispered. "They're doing it on purpose." Hawks landed hard near Aizawa. Feathers scattered. "This is coordinated," Hawks said, voice tight. "Someone hacked the public feeds. They want maximum fear." Aizawa's eyes narrowed. "Then we cut the feeds." Hawks nodded once. "Already trying." He shot upward again, heading for the broadcast relay tower. Bakugo snarled and blasted up after him. "I'll blow the tower." Hawks barked. "Don't. People will think it's Thor doing it." Bakugo froze in midair for half a second, then swore and changed direction, aiming for the relay drones instead. He started popping them with small, precise blasts. Quick flashes, no huge booms. It was still Bakugo. But it was controlled Bakugo. Todoroki looked up at the screens, eyes narrowing. "They're turning the crowd." Deku's chest tightened. Thor had been right. This world had villains who fought with stories. And the stories were eating the sky. By the time the broadcast started breaking apart, the tear had already moved again. It slid across the sky toward the center of the city, like it was being pulled to a perfect spot. Thor followed, hammer swinging, trying to pin it. The storm core chased him like a hungry animal. Below, the heroes chased the fear. They evacuated. They blocked roads. They guided crowds into subway shelters and reinforced buildings. Still, every time the crowd screamed, the core swelled. The commission tried to step in, too. A convoy of black cars rolled into a safe zone. A woman in a suit stepped out with a megaphone, face serious. She looked up at the sky, then at the cameras. Her voice rang out. "Citizens, remain calm. The situation is under control." The entity known as Thor heard her from above, and his jaw tightened. Entity known as, like he was a problem to label. The woman turned toward the nearest camera. "We are deploying a special asset," she said, "under commission oversight." Then she lifted a paper toward the camera. A hero license form. Thor's eyes narrowed. Aizawa stood near her and looked like he wanted to throw the megaphone into the sea. All Might stepped forward beside the woman. Not in full muscle form, not shining, but still All Might. His face was calm. His voice was steady. He didn't read a script. He didn't point to a form. He looked directly into the camera and spoke to people like they were human. "Everyone," All Might said, "look at the heroes around you. We are here. We are not running. We are not leaving you." The woman tried to interrupt. All Might kept speaking. "And look at the man in the sky," All Might continued. "He has been holding the storm back with his own hands. All Might lifted his chin. "Fear makes the monster stronger," he said simply. "So we will not feed it." His words were plain. They were easy. They were true. Deku heard them through a speaker and felt his chest loosen. People did too. Not all of them, but enough. The screaming slowed. The crowd began to move like a river again instead of a stampede. And in the sky, Thor felt the core hesitate. Like it had lost another bite. Thor's eyes narrowed with focus. "Good," he whispered. "Now we end this." The tear reached its chosen spot above the city center. It widened. Not huge, not yet, but enough to show darkness behind it. The rim flashed with rune-like marks, brighter than before. Thor hovered in front of it, cape snapping, Mjolnir humming faintly in his grip. He could feel the structure now. This tear was not only a wound, it had been shaped, guided, strengthened by stolen residue and public fear. Someone had built a door. Thor's voice was low. "Show yourself." A laugh answered. Not from the storm. From below the clouds, a man rose into view on a platform of twisted air, as if gravity was being told to behave differently. Tamura Shigaraki. His hair whipped in the wind. His eyes were bright with hate and excitement. Behind him, wrapped in darkness like a shadow that refused to detach, was the sense of another presence. Not visible, but there, all for one. Shigaraki's smile was sharp. "So this is the great Thunder Man." Thor's eyes hardened. "You are the one dragging the wound." Shigaraki spread his arms. "We're just letting the world see you. That's all." Thor's grip tightened on Mjolnir. "You would tear your own sky to spite me." Shigaraki's laughter cracked like dry wood. "I'd tear everything. This world is fake. Heroes are fake. And now they have a god to worship? Perfect." Thor's eyes flashed. "I am no idol. I am a shield." Shigaraki's smile widened. "Then shield this." He lifted his hand toward the nearest rooftop. Decay rushed out like a wave, racing across concrete toward a building where people were sheltering. Thor moved instantly. He threw Mjolnir. The hammer streaked through the air and slammed into the roof edge like a spike. A shockwave rang out, not explosive, but firm like the air itself said, "Stop." The decay wave halted at the hammer's boundary, cracking the concrete but not passing. Shigaraki's eyes widened, furious. "What?" Thor shot forward, grabbed Shigaraki by the collar, and yanked him into the air away from the rooftops. He didn't punch him yet. He looked him in the eye. "You endanger the innocent," Thor said, voice like a verdict. "That is cowardice." Shigaraki spat. "Don't talk to me like you're better." Thor's face didn't change. "I am better than cruelty." Shigaraki screamed and tried to touch Thor's arm. Thor twisted away. He had fought things that killed with touch before. He didn't need to test it. He slammed his forehead into Shigaraki's face. Not to kill. To stop. Shigaraki's head snapped back. He spun, snarling, and the darkness behind him pulsed like an angry heart. A voice spoke then. Deeper. Smoother. "You are impressive." Thor froze for half a breath. Not from fear, but from recognition. That voice was not Shigaraki's. It was older. Colder. It carried the calm of someone who had planned this with patience. All for one. The darkness behind Shigaraki thickened, and for a moment, Thor saw a hint of a mask and many eyes behind it, like a nightmare trying to stay hidden. "You could leave," the voice said. "You could go home." Thor's eyes narrowed. "You lie." "I do not have to," the voice replied. "I have been collecting what your arrival shed. The residue, the pattern, the key." The tear behind Thor pulsed. Thor's jaw tightened. "You cannot control it," Thor said. The voice chuckled. "Control? Perhaps not forever, but long enough." Shigaraki grinned through blood. "He can send you back, and then we get to keep your storm." Thor's stomach tightened. That was the offer. Not a throne, not praise. A door home, and the price would be this world bleeding for it. Thor's eyes flicked down to the streets. He saw Todoroki guiding people into shelter with ice. He saw Bakugo in the air, blasting drones, sweating hard. He saw Aizawa pulling a child away from falling glass with his scarf. He saw hawks trying to cut a signal wire mid-air, feathers trembling from strain. He saw Deku, small in the crowd, still moving, still shouting calm words even with fear in his eyes. Thor felt something settle inside him. A simple choice. "I will not trade lives," Thor said. The voice went quiet for a beat. Then it spoke, softer. "So noble," it said. "You want to be a symbol too." Thor's eyes burned. "I want to be a guardian." Shigaraki lunged again. Thor dropped him with one brutal, controlled strike of Mjolnir's handle to the ribs. Shigaraki coughed and fell back, wind knocked out. Not defeated, but stopped for a moment. Thor turned fully to the tear. The storm core behind it was swelling, ready to push through. The rim marks flared brighter. Thor raised Mjolnir. Lightning rolled around the hammerhead like a living crown. But he did not throw it into the city. He aimed it at the tear. He spoke, not to people this time, to the structure of the wound, to the rules between worlds. He spoke like a man who knew what doors were supposed to do. "By my oath," Thor said, voice steady, "this gate closes." He struck the rim. The sky rang. The tear shuddered. The storm core screamed and pushed harder. Thor struck again. And again. Each hit was like hammering a bent nail straight. The tear resisted. Not because it was strong, because fear was feeding it from below. Thor heard screams rise again as the storm core dropped a wave of wind toward the streets. He could stop it. He could throw a citywide storm shield up. But if he did it the wrong way, the show of power would spark more fear. So he did it with restraint. He spun Mjolnir in a tight circle and created a clean wall of wind around the falling gust, redirecting it upward and out over empty sky. No buildings torn apart. No cars flipped. Just a breath of air, controlled. Below, Deku saw the wind bend away from a hospital rooftop like a hand pushing danger aside. He shouted, voice cracking, "He's protecting us! Keep moving!" All Might's voice returned through the speakers, firm. "You are safe. Trust the heroes. Trust each other." Fear dropped another notch. The storm core hesitated. Thor felt it. He leaned in and did the hardest thing he had done in this world. He reached with his will. Not to call more lightning. To pull the wrong energy out of the tear itself. The rim marks flared, and a strand of crackling runelight peeled away like skin. Thor grunted, muscles tightening. The tear fought back, trying to keep its key. Thor pulled harder. His cape whipped behind him. His hair snapped in the wind. Lightning crawled over his arms. He did not let go. The strand came free. Then another. Then a whole web. The storm core screamed like an animal being starved. Below, Aizawa stared up, eyes wide. He's stripping it. Nezu's voice crackled through comms, excited and terrified. He's removing the stabilizing pattern. If he succeeds, the weak point collapses. Hawks shouted midair. "Thor, if it collapses while you're in front of it." Thor didn't answer. He couldn't. He was holding a door closed with his bare hands and ripping out the hinges. All for One's voice drifted from the darkness behind Shigaraki, calm as poison. "Careful," it said. "If you close it, you may be trapped here." Thor's teeth clenched. He thought of Asgard. He thought of home. Then he thought of a small girl in the market, crying and calling him a monster because she was scared. He thought of the mother pulling her away. He thought of the truth. Home was not a place you protected only because it was yours. Home was where you chose to stand. "I can live with that," Thor growled. He pulled the last strand free. The tear shrank instantly, collapsing like a mouth being forced shut. The storm core screamed in panic and surged forward, trying to slip through before the gap sealed. Thor slammed Mjolnir straight into it. The impact was massive. The sky flashed white. Thunder rolled across the city like a drum. But Thor angled the blast upward. The pressure hit the clouds, not the streets. The storm core slammed back into the narrowing tear. Thor held his hammer there, braced like a pillar. The tear trembled, trying to reopen. Thor pushed. Below, Deku felt the air lighten, like the world had been holding its breath. People looked up. They saw the tear shrinking. They saw Thor holding it shut like a lid. And for the first time, a different sound rose from the crowd. Not screams. Cheers. Not everyone. But enough. Enough to starve fear. Enough to weaken the storm. The tear snapped smaller, down to a thin line. Then, with one last shudder, it sealed. The clouds above the city stopped twisting. The lightning eyes blinked out. The sky went quiet. Thor hovered in silence for a second, chest rising and falling. He lowered himself slowly. The wind died with him. On the ground, Shigaraki was already moving again, shaking off pain like he hated the idea of staying down. A shadow surged behind him. All for One's presence withdrew, smooth and quick, like someone stepping back before a door closes. They had lost the opening, but they had learned, and Thor had shown them exactly what kind of wall he could be. Shigaraki snarled, eyes burning. This isn't over. Thor landed hard a street away, cracking asphalt. He stared at Shigaraki. His voice was low. It never is, Thor said. Shigaraki fled into smoke and chaos, not because he was weak, but because his mission had changed. His job had been to feed the sky, not to die in a fistfight. Aizawa ran up first, scarf dragging behind him. He stopped a few feet from Thor, watching his face like he was checking if thunder lived behind his eyes. Thor looked tired now. Not injured. Just heavy with what he had done. Hawks landed next, feathers falling like exhausted leaves. You closed it, he said, half in disbelief. Thor nodded once. Todoroki approached, calm as ever. Is it gone? Thor's gaze lifted to the sky. Clear now. Normal. Not gone, Thor said. Held back. Deku arrived, breathing hard, eyes shining. You did it, Deku said. Thor looked at him, and something softened. We did it, Thor corrected. Sirens continued, but they sounded smaller now. All Might approached through the crowd, moving slowly but steady. He stopped and looked up at Thor with quiet respect. Thank you, All Might said simply. Thor's jaw tightened, like he didn't know what to do with gratitude. Then he nodded. It is my duty, Thor said. Behind them, the commission woman pushed forward, tablet in hand, eyes locked on Thor. This changes nothing, she said sharply. We still need oversight. The public saw you. This requires structure. Thor turned to face her. His expression was calm, but his voice was firm. I will not be leashed, Thor said, but I will answer calls for help. You may request. You may not command. The woman's lips tightened. That is not acceptable. Aizawa stepped in, eyes cold. It was acceptable when he held your sky shut. The woman snapped. This is not your jurisdiction, Eraserhead. Hawks rubbed his forehead, exhausted. Can we not do this right now? Nezu's voice came through comms, bright and dry. I will happily schedule a meeting. In about never. For a second, even Aizawa's mouth twitched. Thor looked between them, then up at the clear sky again. The world was still here. For now, he had made his choice. And the choice had made a new reality. Later that night, rain fell. Not from Thor, just normal rain. It tapped softly on the roof of like the world was reminding them what calm sounded like. Izuku Midoriya sat on the rooftop steps, notebook open, pen resting on the page without moving. Thor sat a few feet away, legs bent, forearms resting on his knees. Mjolnir lay beside him, dry even in the rain. Deku finally spoke, voice quiet. Do you miss home? He asked. Thor's eyes stayed on the city lights below. Yes. Deku swallowed. Then, why did you choose to stay? Thor didn't answer right away. He listened to the rain. He listened to the wind. Then he spoke in plain words. Because the danger followed me, Thor said, and because I saw your people stand up even when they were afraid. Deku's grip tightened on his notebook. People still fear you. Thor nodded. Some always will. Deku looked down. That little girl, in the market, she called you a monster. Thor's jaw tightened, just a little. I remember, he said. Deku's voice shook. How do you handle that? Thor looked at him. His eyes were not angry. They were steady. You do not handle it by becoming cruel, Thor said. You handle it by staying true. Deku's pen finally moved, scribbling fast. He looked up again. Can I ask something else? Thor nodded. Deku hesitated, then asked the question that had been sitting in his chest since the first day. What makes someone worthy? Deku asked. Thor glanced at Mjolnir, then back to Deku. Worthiness is not strength, Thor said. It is choice. Deku blinked. Choice? Thor nodded. The choice to protect when it costs you. The choice to stay kind when anger would be easier. The choice to stand when running would be safer. Deku swallowed hard. So, anyone could be worthy? Thor's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Many could, he said. Few choose to be. Deku stared at his notebook, then blurted, Can I try? He pointed at Mjolnir, then immediately looked embarrassed. Sorry, that's rude. Thor looked at the hammer, then back at Deku. Try, Thor said. Deku's heart pounded as he stood and stepped closer. He wrapped both hands around the handle. He pulled. Nothing. Not even a wobble. Deku's face went red. Yeah, okay, I knew it. Thor stood and placed a hand on Deku's shoulder. It was heavy, but not crushing. You did not fail, Thor said. Deku blinked. I didn't lift it. Thor's voice was gentle, but certain. Worthiness is not proven by one moment on a roof. Deku's throat tightened. Thor looked out at the city again. Far away, sirens still moved, but the screams were gone. Nizu's sensors were quiet for the first time in weeks. Hawks would still be suspicious tomorrow. Aizawa would still plan for worst cases. The Commission would still try to write rules for storms. And somewhere in the dark, villains would still be planning. But tonight, the sky was closed. Thor breathed in the cool rain air. Deku sat back down, calmer now. A few minutes passed in silence. Then Deku asked, very softly, Will you ever go back? Thor's gaze lifted to the clouds. I do not know, he said honestly. Deku nodded, accepting that. Thor's grip tightened on Mjolnir's handle as he picked it up and rested it beside him again. Yet whether I leave or stay, Thor said, I will not abandon a world that needs guarding. Deku looked at him, rain on his hair, and smiled a small, tired smile. Then, welcome to you, Deku said. Thor let out a quiet breath that sounded almost like a laugh. Your school has strange rules, Thor said. Deku blinked. Like what? Thor glanced down toward the building where, on a desk somewhere, another stack of forms waited. Paper, Thor said with real confusion. So much paper. Deku snorted before he could stop himself. Thor looked surprised at the sound. Then his mouth finally cracked into a full smile. Thunder rumbled far away. Not a threat. Just a distant sound in a living world. And for the first time since he arrived, Thor let it roll without reaching for his hammer.